Hello and welcome to this week's vlog. You know how they say that the old ones are always the best? Well, it's not always true, but sometimes in the film world it is. An example of which I shall give you now. I've just finished watching a film by the name of The China Syndrome, and in case you're thinking this is a film about teacups and saucers, do not. Its topic is a lot more serious. In fact, it's a film which was produced in 1979. It stars Jack Lemmon and Jane Fonda in award-winning performances. The set design, the way that it was filmed, all basically were nominated for awards. What it's about is a nuclear power plant which isn't safe, basically, to operate properly. Except that the people that run the power plant have invested a lot of money in it and don't really want the truth to be out there. So they go ahead and try and run the plant at full power. But only one employee knows of the danger that that could present. And it is indeed the China Syndrome. If you've not come across this term, fanciful as it is, let me explain it. It is the hypothetical situation where a reactor core, if exposed to the air, would heat up so much, such would be the intensity of the reaction, that it would melt through its casing and fall through the ground, and theoretically go all the way through the planet. Of course that wouldn't happen, it would explode when it hit the groundwater with devastating effect, and that is the point of this film. Now thankfully, in the real world, and to an extent in this film as well, nuclear power plants have a million different safety features, and of course they are high security, so the likelihood of such an event actually happening is very slim. And I personally do think that nuclear power has a lot of very positive uses. But in this film, it takes the whole subject and turns it into a very, very intense thriller. And arguably one of the best moments in the film is where you've got this guy who's basically taken over the plant because no one will believe him, no one will listen. And he goes into the control room and everyone else is gone, and it is absolutely silent apart from the electrical hum of the equipment. And it's such an eerie scene. It's just brilliant. This cold clinical room full of buttons and switches and knobs and dials and all the stuff that you typically see in a radio power station control room, and just this one guy standing by the desk with a bit of a cob on because he's quite nervous, as you would be in a situation like that, and his managers and bosses behind bulletproof glass up at the top are watching him, talking into walkie-talkies, and ultimately trying to find ways, albeit violent ones, of getting him out of there. So if you've not seen this film, and you may not have done, it's not a big family action movie by any stretch, but what it is a very powerful political thriller. And whilst it's not maybe quite on a par with Edge of Darkness, which is one of my favourite ever nuclear thriller series, it is still pretty darn good and makes a good Sunday afternoon watch. What happens when Star Trek gets silly? Well, quite a few things actually, and it does happen quite often, but in this particular case, it's a rather wonderful kind of silly, a stupendous kind of silly, you might say. I am watching my way through Deep Space Nine, and I'm currently up to season 4, at the point where Sisko shaves his hair and goes badass, and the Dominion appear from the other side of the galaxy and start meddling basically with the affairs of the Alpha Quadrant, of course ultimately leading to the big Dominion Federation war. And season 4 was one of those seasons where I think the writers had a different intention originally for what would happen, but ended up being somewhat sidetracked. So there are a fair few episodes, 1 or 2 episodes anyway, that sort of feel like they were put in because they needed an episode to go in. But Deep Space Nine, being Deep Space Nine, does everything with such charisma and charm, you sort of have to forgive it that, really, because it's still a darn good piece of drama. And this particular episode that struck me as rather fun is called Our Man Bashir. Bashir being a reference to the space station's doctor, Julian Bashir, played by Alexander Siddig. Now, Star Trek has always been about technology and virtual reality, and of course nothing symbolises that more than the famous holodeck, which is often a recourse for entire episodes to be based around, as one sees a lot in Star Trek Voyager, and to a certain extent in the Star Trek The Next Generation series, much less obviously in Star Trek Enterprise, because it didn't really feature that much, but in this particular episode, our man Bashir, said Dr. Bashir is playing the hollow role of a James Bond character, basically. It's not really exactly James Bond, but it's obvious pastiche of James Bond. In fact, the whole episode is played as a rather nice, sweet parody to a James Bond film. You have the science officer Jadzia Dax, who plays someone called Honey Bear. It's brilliant. Cisco himself is playing a guy called Noah Wonderpants or some such name. I wish it was that, but unfortunately it's something a bit more mundane. And then literally the only thing that it misses is shaken not stirred, because there is one point at which Bashir's character has a martini. Now I guess they just couldn't push it that far to make it that obvious. Anyway, it's a real play up of the whole Bond spy movie genre, except with the Star Trek twist. And in the end, yes, the good guys do win, but as is always the case with Deep Space Nine, there's always a little bit of moral ambiguity in there, even when they are having fun on the holodeck. Now, I'm told, from what I read, that MGM, who own the rights to the James Bond movies, actually wrote a letter of complaint to Paramount Pictures because they felt the parody was so close that it contravened certain copyright laws. That's one side of it. What I do also know from reading various wiki entries and various other sort of websites is that the cast and crew had a tremendously good time making it. One particular actor, Nana Visitor, who plays Major Kira Nerys, she, the Bajoramon with the earrings, she comes out of a wall on a round bed which is on the other side of a drinks cabinet in a very sort of pussy-go-lightly James Bond style. You know, where one can imagine Sean Connery or Pierce Brosnan, something like that, standing, or even, of course, Daniel Craig standing there sipping a drink. But good old Star Trek is never afraid to push the boundaries, even to be very affectionately parodying other classic works. Well, thank you very much for watching. That's all we've got time for today, I'm afraid. However, fear not, for we shall be back again next week. So whatever you do, have a fantastic time these next 7 days, won't you? And we'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.